And welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. My name is Mike Migo. Now we shift gears and talk matters health. You know, every Tuesday we are talking about health, and today we are going to take a deep dive into the matter of postpartum hemorrhage, which is a very big problem, and it contributes to the rate of maternal death, not only in Kenya, but also globally. And to help me in that conversation in studio, I'm joined by Dr. Kireki Omanwa, who is the president of Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And also in studio, I'm joined by Naomi Motiso, who is a midwife at Thika Level 5 Hospital. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Before we even get into this conversation, let me start with you, Naomi. How is your day within the medical setting where you work? How is your day dealing with expectant mothers?
Yeah, thank you for that question. My day, of course, is a good day and a busy day.
Yes.
Yeah, it starts early in the morning, 7:30 a.m. until 4:30 in the evening. And of course, in the health sector, when you get to the hospital, the first thing that you do, you want to know the clients that you are dealing with. I'm not calling them patients, because expectant mothers are not patients, they are clients. So you have to know your clients, and also the ones who are coming, you start receiving them and admitting them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. How is your day? How is your day within when you're dealing especially with the expectant mothers?
My day can be quite unpredictable.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm on call, and we are on call as consultants. I teach at the University of Nairobi, and by virtue of me teaching at the University of Nairobi, I also work in Kenyatta National Hospital. That is where we teach our students and future doctors and future consultants. So when I am on call, the first thing we have to do is to go through labor ward to see what type of patients are there, if there are any complications, if there are patients who are potentially can complicate. So we need to make decisions whether they are delivering and what method of delivering they are going to use. And then after that, I go to do other things, but my phone is always on red alert all the time, because I can be called back to labor ward at any time. Sometimes we need to come back even in the night to sort out any complications, or if our junior colleagues who are still training come up with an issue which they may not be able to deal with, then we have to come in and step in and help them to save these mothers' lives.
Yes. Let's now get into the discussion of postpartum hemorrhage, and I'll start with you, Daktari. When we mention postpartum hemorrhage, what are we talking about?
First of all, let me thank you very much for inviting us to the studio to come and talk about this very, very important topic. And it is one of the causes of what we call maternal mortality rates, or maternal mortality ratios, as it were. And what is maternal mortality ratio? Maternal mortality ratio is out of every 100,000 women who deliver, how many of them die for different reasons. And we have what we call the big five. And the big five, the first one is PPH, that is postpartum hemorrhage, which I'll dive into in a second. The second one is preeclampsia. The third one is sepsis, maternal sepsis. Then we have post-abortion complications. And then last of all, we have obstructed labor. You asked about PPH, or postpartum hemorrhage. Normally what happens, first of all, we are created in a beautiful way, ladies.
Yes.
Because when you look at the womb, which does not have a baby, is actually about the size of my hand. About 120 grams.
Yeah.
Now, imagine that is the place whereby a baby is going to grow, a baby who is on average, let's say 3 kilos. Sometimes there are 2 babies, and they have a placenta or placentas, and there is amniotic fluid as well. So that tiny organ, which was 120, 130 grams, grows to accommodate that baby, amniotic fluid, placenta, and so on. The placenta is the structure that basically connects the baby with the mother. And then there is a cord. And through that cord, the nutrition passes to the baby, and oxygen passes through the baby, and some of the waste pass back through that cord and into the maternal circulation and out into the world, as it were. When a patient delivers, whether it is through natural means, that is vaginal delivery, or whether it is through a cesarean section, that baby, once the baby has come out, the placenta has come out, what happens is that automatically the uterus starts to contract. It reduces immediately. When you talk about postpartum hemorrhage, is that when a woman has delivered, that uterus does not contract the way it should. That is one of the reasons of postpartum hemorrhage, what we call atony, meaning that the uterus loses that ability to contract.
Before you continue, this applies to whether you have had cesarean section or vaginal delivery.
Correct.
Okay.
Because normally when a woman delivers vaginally, she loses about 100, 150, 200 milliliters of blood, which the body can accommodate very easily, unless she went to deliver with anemia, where the blood level is very low. Then even a little bit of loss can actually lead to postpartum hemorrhage. Now, when you're delivering through a cesarean section, the patient, because this is a major surgery, the patient may lose about 400, 500 milliliters of blood, which is again acceptable. The body will accommodate that. But when that loss of blood is more than about 1,000 milliliters through a cesarean section, and more than 500 milliliters or through natural delivery, vaginal delivery, then we are dealing with postpartum hemorrhage. That is excessive bleeding after delivery of the baby.
Now, let me come to you, Naomi.
Yes.
Of course, this is one of the things that lead or contribute to maternal death. But why is it a serious concern as we speak?
Thank you for that question. It is a serious concern because hemorrhage is bleeding. And when you lose blood, you become unstable hemodynamically. So, the way Dr. has explained,
yes,
it is you can die very fast. You imagine, even when you get a trauma, maybe you have been cut by something, you bleed, you lose a lot of blood. When you lose a lot of blood, so what happens? It even leads to organ dysfunction and failure of the organs. So that's why it is very serious, because it will lead to maternal mortality very fast. Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons that expectant or mothers who have just given birth utilize a lot of blood donation.
Yes, they utilize, because anytime you are in a facility where you are delivering women or women are giving birth, you must have blood. You cannot be in a facility without blood, because when they lose blood, they need that blood almost immediately. They are transfused, the blood, the volume is replaced because they have lost the blood.
Yes.
Yes.
Which also underscores the aspect of people donating blood, not when it's needed, but when they can, anytime they can. Yes,
that is what we are encouraging and what we are saying. And especially when a woman, or we say when your wife or your spouse is pregnant, it is very important. We are encouraging even men to donate blood. When your spouse is expectant, you are supposed to donate blood, voluntary. You don't need to be coerced to go and donate the blood, because there is nowhere where blood is bought. It's not like a fluid that you get from the stores, or from the cancer, or from anywhere. Blood comes from a human being. So you have to have enough stores of blood so that you can replace blood. This blood is needed almost immediately when you have lost it.
Yes.
Yes.
Daktari, what is the prevalence of PPH within the country? Compare it within the continent of Africa.
Thank you. You see, most of the time when you talk about numbers, sometimes it doesn't give the real picture.
Yes.
Until you put some faces to the numbers.
Okay.
We know that when we start talking about PPH, you hear, oh, I lost a mother, I lost a sister, I lost a cousin, I lost a friend, relative, and so on. When we look at according to the government statistics, we lose about 355 women out of every 100,000 women who deliver.
was a big number.
I can see you're shocked.
Yes.
Now, and you see that is an estimation. Why? Because there is underreporting, serious underreporting. When you look at international organizations, talk about WHO, World Health Organization, talk about UNFPA, and so on, they put our statistics at a lot higher, at about 550 out of every 100,000 women who deliver. Now, in Kenya, we have an average delivery per year, about 1.6 million women deliver every year. So if we lose 550 out of every 100,000, so we lose 5,500 in 1 million. And remember, there is 600 remaining, so we throw in another 300 and something. So we lose about almost 6,000, almost going to 7,000 women every year during delivery or soon after delivery. And out of all these deliveries, let's just use a round figure, let's say 6,000. Out of these 6,000 women who die every year, 40 to 45% of them, the reason is postpartum hemorrhage. And as I said, postpartum hemorrhage, because the uterus does not contract when it's huge. They are what we call cervical tears, because if we look at the uterus as a balloon, where you blow in air, we call it the cervix. And then where the air goes in, actually that is the uterus itself. And that is where the baby, stays during pregnancy. So if you have tears in the cervix and they're not recognized early enough, it will lead to postpartum hemorrhage. If we have patients who have an anemia, where anemia is basically the amount of blood is lower than it is supposed to be, and the norm is supposed to be around 11 onwards to around 13, 14, and we have seen patients who come to hospital with an HB or anemia of, let's say, 6, 5. We have seen even 3 point something grams per deciliter, and some of them have never had a visit. They have never been seen by a doctor or even a midwife or even a medical officer. Some of them have no idea about their blood group, and so on. So we have all these issues that actually contribute to these very high numbers, and that is in Kenya. When you come to Africa, the highest number of maternal mortality rates is actually in Southern Sudan, which is about 1,200, out of every 100,000 who deliver. Followed by, I think, if I'm not very sure, but I think Chad is second with 1,067 out of every 100,000. Nigeria is third with 1,043. Central Africa Republic 863, Somalia is 621, and so on. And then it's very unfortunate that actually all these countries are in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
But then the other end of the pyramid, or of the spectrum, we have countries whereby maternal mortality rates are very low. For example, in Western countries, Western Europe, you find in the UK, for example, it's about 5 out of every 100,000. There are countries like Netherlands, which are about the same. Poland has 2 out of every 100,000. Slovenia has 0. Luxembourg has 0, and so on. So it is quite a wide spectrum, unfortunately. And
these days, PPH deaths are preventable?
They are preventable.
Yes.
Actually, we call it preventable maternal deaths. And why are they preventable? They are preventable because we can actually know that the chances of this patient who is here with us is going to have PPH are very high. Why? Because if you have risk factors, for example, a patient has come who is carrying twins or even triplets, because with these days we do quite a bit of in vitro fertilization, that is assisted reproductive technologies, and you find these patients come with twins. That is a risk factor. When you take the history, the medical history and obstetric history, you find that this patient has delivered big babies. For example, the other time when I was in KNH, we had a patient who delivered, the first baby was 6 kilos.
6 kilos.
The second one was 4.7 kilos. The third one was 4.5 kilos. The fourth one was 4.2. That was the smallest baby she had delivered. And she delivered vaginally. So that in itself is a risk, a very, very high risk factor. Because then, when you have a big baby, the uterus is very stretched. Yes. And once the patient has delivered, that mechanism of contracting that uterus can be sort of inhibited, so you find she starts bleeding.
Okay.
Patients who have diabetes in pregnancy, or even normally, because sometimes even those ones who have diabetes can and do get pregnant, that is a risk factor. Why? Because normally patients who have gestational diabetes or even normal diabetes, they tend to have big babies. Patients who have had PPH before, that is also a risk factor. Patients who have fibroids, and fibroids are basically growths on the uterus, and this can lead to overstretching of the uterus. And when the uterus now starts to contract, the fibroids, wherever they are, they will inhibit the contractions, leading to PPH. Anemia that we talked about, when the HB level is low, the clotting mechanism does not work the way it is supposed to work. Age is also a factor. You have young girls, 15, 14, 13, who come to deliver because they are basically children. So their bodies are not yet prepared to actually do what? To actually go through the whole process, very complicated and very traumatic to the body. And in order for the body to now protect itself against bleeding. Mature women, I don't want to use the word old women. mature women, 35 years and above, around 40, and especially if it is the first time they're delivering, that is also a risk factor. Why? Because most of them also come with high blood pressure, preeclampsia, and so on, and these combined will actually lead to that, and so on.
Okay. Now, Naomi, let's talk about access to adequate skilled healthcare, especially in rural areas.
Yeah.
It should be one of the contributing factors that lead to PPH.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Daktari has really talked about the risk factors.
Yes.
And also what happens. But okay, in these rural areas.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes there are no adequate health care workers, and if they are there, maybe they are not of that higher level. You cannot have an obstetrician in a level 1 or maybe level 2. So you find that, you know, in health or when you are managing any complication, it must be multidisciplinary. You can't manage it in isolation. You must have the midwives, you must have the doctors, the obstetricians, for you, the lab and all that. So you get in these low facilities or in rural areas, there are no laboratories because the blood cannot be kept in the wards. The blood is kept in the laboratory. There are no obstetricians. There are no enough midwives. So you get that women are really compromised when they go deliver in such facilities. And also in those rural areas, no, but because of the distances or because of also transport, they don't even access those facilities. So most of the women deliver at home, and it is very risky to deliver at home and get a postpartum hemorrhage. Remember, we have said that bleeding is intense and it comes out very fast. So from a rural facility, for you to transport that client from home to the hospital, they will have lost a lot of blood. Yeah, so women in rural facilities or rural areas are really, it is a real challenge.
What do you think needs to be done to maybe at least mitigate those effects? Do we open or do we allow now obstetricians to level 1s, or because sometimes cases of such cases result to referrals, which sometimes takes time.
Yeah.
How do we address that?
Yeah, thank you. Depending with the area, because if the area is well populated, you can upgrade the hospitals. Yeah, because you cannot post someone who is an obstetrician or a doctor to a facility where they are seeing only 2 or 3 patients or clients in a day. So because you'll be wasting resources.
Yes.
So if the area is well populated, then you can have the facilities upgraded to a bigger facility, so that you can be able to have all the healthcare workers that you need.
Yeah.
Yes.
Daktari, what are the symptoms? Can one tell that they have this or they are predisposed to it?
Maybe before I answer your question,
yes.
I just felt I'm itching to add on to what she was what she was saying when you talk about health personnel. the obstetricians in this country are almost 700 in number, which is a relatively good number, but we are not there yet. Most of the obstetricians, my colleagues, are actually in Nairobi. Nairobi has the lion's share of consultants, which is about 200 plus. But does that mean that Nairobi is well served in terms of services? Not necessarily, because you may find that most of these, my colleagues, are actually in private practice, and very few of them are in public service. When you go out there to the counties, you'll find that in as much as Nairobi is very well served, at least in terms of numbers, there are counties whereby you find we have maybe 2 consultants in a whole county.
Yes.
Others, they have 3, you know, and so on. So you find that even if these consultants were to work 25 hours a day, they will have very little dent on what we are talking about. So we have issues of human resource. The other time, I think 2 weeks ago, I was in a meeting. We went for a meeting in Uganda with some of the health ministers from Homa Bay, from Murang'a, and so on, from Nairobi as well. We just went to understand what our colleagues are doing in Uganda. And what came out was very interesting, in that they have stopped. It was a political decision. They have stopped building health centers. They're not building any health centers. So as we are discussing, our colleagues, the health minister said, look, in my county, we have 151 health centers, which are manned by a nurse, you know. So, and then some of them lack manpower, but the health centers are there. Okay, so you're wondering now, we open these health centers because it looks nice politically that you're doing something, but essentially, actually, you are not doing anything. If anything, you are stretching the health manpower to almost to be very thin on the ground, such that they are not even effective at all. So our colleagues in Uganda decided they are not opening up any health centers. What they are doing, they are upgrading them to level 3s, which is the same as our level 2 or level 3 hospitals. And what are they doing? They are saying in every level 3 hospital, they are going to have an operation theater. And with operation theater, now they are sending the personnel down to those level 3s. What is the knock-on effect of this? The knock-on effect is that their maternal mortality rates, which were 505 in 2000, the year 2000, 2002, now it's 189. So it has had significant impact on what is happening. Of course, there are a lot of issues as well, issues of supply, issues of medications, issues of sometimes late referrals, issues of absenteeism, and so on and so forth. But you can see that they are doing something to that effect. Now, coming back to where we are, if you have a consultant in a county, 2 consultants in a county, we really need to rethink what we are doing. The problem is that we have 47 counties with 47 ministries of health, with 47 different priorities, and so on. So in one county, the governor can be very magnanimous and say, please go and study and whatever, and come back so that you can help our people. And you can actually see the impact. Look at Makueni, for example, for instance. His Excellency, the governor, we had a meeting with him the other day. He's actually one of our honorary members, and is actually a champion of PPH. And we are, you know, very proud to be associated with him and his wife. And what they have done is that he's very open and he's helping, and we can actually see the impact. How do we distribute this very precious resource that we have? I think, that is my opinion, having a sort of a centralized system. We have 700 obstetricians, consultant obstetricians and gynecologists. We have, let's say, 20 gynecologists, oncologists. But how do we work with what we have so that Kenyans of all walks in life should actually have better health? An authority which actually says in Homa Bay, you need an extra consultant. So, Dr. Kireki, can you go and work in Homa Bay? In Moyale, I think you need 4 consultants. Can we get Dr. Njoroge, Dr. Maina, Dr. Omondi, and whatever, to go and work there? I think that if we had such an authority, it would sort of help. But that is not the end of it. We have human resource. We also need medications. Sometimes a research was done, and from with some of my colleagues from the department, Professor Qureshi, Professor Alfred Osotti, Dr. George Gwako, and actually what came out is that some of the medications we have in Kenya are actually very poor quality.
Yeah.
Fake medicines. So a patient is having PPH, you give her an injection, you expect that uterus to start contracting, and it doesn't. And you give her another injection, and it doesn't work. Why? Because the medication we have is actually fake. So we have medications. We have issues of stock out. You may need this medication, it is not there. We have issues of blood. I'm very happy that you talked about blood. In Kenya, we collect 276,000 units of blood. Mm-hmm. That small bag that we have, that you're given in hospital, is 1 unit. And that is barely 60% of what we need as a country. As a country, we need a lot more. We need about 500,000 units of blood in a year. And guess what? 70% of the 276,000 units that we get, we collect as a country, 70% of it is used by who? By our mothers who are delivering. Sometimes we are in a pickle because you go and you are operating and you can see this is massive PPH, and you say, I need 5 units, I need 6 units now. You are told you can get 1 unit. Sasa jipange. Yeah. How do you, what do you do with 1 unit? You know, that sort of thing. Now, so we need human resource, we need medications, we need blood, we need commodities, because as that woman is bleeding, there are things we can use, there are things which you can insert inside the uterus so that it stops bleeding and it starts contracting. Some of them are not available, completely not available. We did a research through COGS, whereby we actually I actually commissioned my colleagues from the office, COGS office, to call every county hospital and sub-county hospitals, 94 of them, to find out whether they have something you call uterine balloon tamponade. And guess what? About 48 to 50% of those hospitals refuse to give information because they said these are government hospitals and we don't give information. The ones that gave us information, I think it was about 5% of them who actually had one of them, just one of that. And this is a single-use device. It's about 5% of them who had one. And a huge majority of them had even never heard about something called a uterine balloon tamponade. And it's something which is life-saving, simple and not expensive, but not available. The next pillar that we need is an ICU. When you have a patient who is bleeding and is literally like a tap, and you have done everything, you have done the surgery, you've used medications, you've given blood, she needs to be monitored. How many ICU beds do we have? It's a challenge. What we have is that we have a room called an ICU, but most of the time it does not have equipment, it does not have personnel, and so on. So in order for us to actually reduce these numbers, we need to have all these pillars together. Remove one of them and you're going losing them.
Okay. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we are continuing with this conversation centering around postpartum hemorrhage. Don't go too far.
Greetings in the name of the Most High Jah Rastafari. My good name is Marley Moses, the positive warrior, alongside...
Yes, sir, DJ D-Rage, the baddest. Each and every Wednesday from 10 p.m. on KBC Channel 1 TV.
Tunakuletea the biggest reggae party in 254 in a yard extra. Extra niceness of reggae music.
Extra dose of entertainment.
When the thing is nice,
we have to do it twice.
On KBC Channel 1, we are a TV station like no other. Get a taste of the best in entertainment.
Yes, indeed.
Feel the passion.
Will you promise me?
I swear that you will never lose me. I can't get married to you.
I'm sure you knew about it. That's why you're making fun of me.
Experience the drama.
Get out. Who is the man in this one?
And the laughter.
Hii wigi umevaa kichwani.
Sile wakati tulikuwa tunapishwa tunapewa mheshimiwa.
Move to the beat.
We are live from Broadcasting House.
And get informed on the latest happenings. KBC Channel 1.
Wow. Yeah!
We are the full package.
Oh yes.
And Kenya's watching.
Thank you very much for joining us.
At 33 minutes past the hour, welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. We are talking about postpartum hemorrhage. And Naomi, one of the things that one of my colleagues has asked me, yes. Does home water bath, can it lead to PPH? You know, there are those people who decide to give birth at home.
Yes.
They have a big basin, water.
Yes. No. Of course, PPH is not cannot be caused by the how you are the mode of delivery. Mm-hmm. But of course, delivering at home, maybe that is where the issue is, delivering at home. Otherwise, the mode how you're going to give birth cannot lead to PPH. And whatever we said, even when we were starting, you cannot even be able to say that client will get PPH and this one will not get PPH. You cannot be able to predict. Of course, sometimes you become prepared throughout, yes. But you cannot be able to say this one is the one who will get PPH, the other one will not get PPH. Okay. This one, because she has delivered through vaginal delivery, will get PPH. The one who has delivered through cesarean section will get PPH, or the one who has delivered through a stool bath, because there is also a stool bath. There is also delivering through that water bath will get PPH. No. It is not how or what they have used to give birth or to deliver will cause PPH. But there is also an importance when you give birth. Let's say you have given birth at home. Yes. Is there a need to seek medical attention after? Yes. Thank you for that question, and a very important question. Yes. We encourage every woman who gives birth at home to go to the hospital. Remember, when we were talking about the definition of PPH, you have two types of PPH. You can get primary PPH that occurs after birth and within 24 hours after birth. That is primary PPH. Okay. There's also secondary PPH that occurs between 24 hours after birth to up to 6 weeks after birth. So you might have even delivered today and you get PPH even tomorrow. So it is very important for this woman who has delivered home to go to the hospital to be checked, to, of course, to be given after birth. You get some medication or some medicine to help to contract the uterus. They are called uterotonics. So it is important for them to go to the hospital so that they can get the uterotonic and also to be checked. Remember, Daktari talked about the predisposing factors of PPH. There are also the causes, the real causes of PPH. And the real causes of PPH, we define them in four T's. Okay. Yeah. The first T, he talked about it. It is tone. Tone, it is when the uterus contracts. That is one cause. If there is no tone or the uterus does not contract, then the patient will get PPH or the client will get PPH. Then the second T is trauma. And I was talking about it because you might have delivered at home and you get trauma. Get trauma of the vaginal trauma or cervical trauma or even the trauma of the uterus. So it's good to be checked in the hospital so that you can be checked whether you have trauma. Of course, at home, you are not able to check whether the cervix has trauma. You cannot be able to check at home. In the hospital, you'll be able to check maybe the outer part, the perineum and maybe the vagina, but at home, you cannot be able to see the cervix because you have to use a speculum to be able to see the cervix or even the uterus. Then the third T is tissues. PPH or postpartum hemorrhage can be caused by tissues. The tissues include the placenta that was supporting this baby. When you leave a tissue or a tissue is left in the uterus will not be able to contract. So it will, the client will get postpartum hemorrhage. So it is very important for this client to go to the hospital to be checked whether there are tissues. It can be placenta, it can be blood clot, whether they have been left inside the uterus and they will make the uterus not to contract, so they will be checked in the hospital. And the other T is thrombin, and this one is when the blood is not able to clot. Because sometimes some clients deliver, the percentage is not very big, but there are clients who deliver and the blood cannot be able to clot. So they continue bleeding and they need to be in the hospital so that they can be managed. Because when they are in the hospital, they will be managed. Yeah.
Okay. Daktari.
Yes.
Let's talk about symptoms of PPH. Yes.
Just as the name suggests, it's just bleeding, excessive bleeding. Just as we said, vaginal delivery, more than 500 milliliters. And during a cesarean section, over 1,000 milliliters.
Yes.
Will the patient or the client know that she's actually having PPH? Sometimes they do, because she has delivered, she has her baby, and then she feels wet, saying, "Sister, I'm feeling wet." You know, and when you look at the linen, you find she's lying actually in a pool of blood. So it is basically bleeding. That is the first indicator. And then as she loses more of this blood, other systems will kick in to try and prevent the excessive loss of blood. You'll find that her hands start becoming cold and clammy. Why? Because the vessels contract, trying not to lose as much blood as possible. Once that has happened, her blood pressure starts dropping. So you find the normal blood pressure is 120 over 70 over 100 over 80. You find that her blood pressure started dropping. It's 90 over 50, 80 over 30, and so on. Her heartbeat starts going up. Why? Because now because there is less blood in the system, so the heart starts pumping a lot faster to try and send the little blood that is there to all the organs. So you find what we call the pulse starts going high. So when you come to see her, cold, clammy hands or limbs for that matter, blood pressure is dropping, but the pulse has increased. She is already in what you call hemorrhagic shock. Now, next what happens is that the body tries to compensate and tries to channel the little blood that is there to the very important organ, which is the brain. Okay, so you find, yes, everything is happening, this is happening, but she slowly starts losing consciousness, starts feeling dizzy because not enough blood supply is going to the brain, not enough oxygen is going to the brain, the waste is also building up in the system, so the systems start shutting down slowly by slowly. The first one which shuts up is the kidneys. So there is no urine that comes out. When you do a blood test, you find the liver is not functioning the way it should. And then unfortunately, she may go into a coma, or even before she goes into a coma, she will have a cardiac arrest. Why the cardiac arrest? Because the heart is pumping too fast and it cannot compensate for the blood loss, and then it is too much for it and it just stops. And from there now, most of the time, unfortunately, is downhill, as it were. And then they end up having, because there is no enough circulation, no enough blood circulating, no enough oxygen, you find what we call injury to the brain, what we call ischemic injury to the brain. Why? Because the brain tissue is not getting what it is supposed to get, So it ends up getting injured. And even if you resuscitate this patient and then you manage to get the heart working and give her the fluids and so on, the injury to the brain is actually one of the biggest problems that we have, and it can be actually terminal in the sense that yes, we have managed to revive the organs, but the most important, which is the brain, is not working the way it should. So she ends up coming in a what you call a vegetative state, whereby all the other organs are working, but the brain is not working the way it should. And it's very sad that we do receive.
Let me ask this: are there methods of diagnosing PPH?
The bleeding. The most important thing is how much has the patient lost.
Yes.
That is the diagnosis.
This happens pre-birth?
No. After delivery.
Okay.
After she has delivered. But as Naomi was saying, the predisposing factors that we talked about, the big babies that she has delivered, anemia, which affects about 14 to 20% of our patients. So if we can sort out anemia right during pregnancy, we'll actually reduce our PPH by about 15 to 20%. That sort of thing. If a patient has fibroids, the growths that I talked about, and by the way, 30 to 60% of women of African origin, whether it is in Kenya, whether it is in the US, whether it's in Cuba, so long as you have African blood, you'll have a tendency of having these fibroids. And these fibroids are usually many and they are big. So once we identify these patients who have these risk factors, we should identify them and profile them, and these are the ones we actually should follow up very, very seriously during the ANC visits.
Okay. Now,
maybe to add on what Dr. is saying, it is very, very important to have antenatal clinic and visits for every pregnant woman. And during the clinics, that is the time you can be able to detect some of the things that might lead to PPH, like what he has talked about.
So we're talking prevention now.
Yeah, hemoglobin level, prevention. Yeah, okay. Hemoglobin level. How is the HB of that patient at that particular time? Because they can be. Sometimes you might find that the HB is so low, you need to either transfuse, or you need to use dietary supplementation, or you need to use iron. And every pregnant woman gets iron and folic acid during pregnancy to boost their level of blood. And also you are able to advise on diet early enough. Okay? Then in this antenatal clinic, you will also get this woman with multiple pregnancy. Multiple pregnancy is what he talked about: twins, triplets, quadruplets. You will be able to identify. And when you get that this woman as multiple gestation or pregnancy, you are able to tell them, deliver in the hospital. Because you will not be able to wait for them or deliver them just like any other patient. This is a woman who is at risk of getting postpartum hemorrhage.
Very high risk, if anything.
Very high risk. A woman with a big baby, what we call macrosomic baby. Yes. A baby who is 4 point something kilograms. It's not the same as the woman who has a baby who is 3.1, 2 point something. And this one cannot only be detected during pregnancy because they have obstetric ultrasounds. So it is very important for women to visit antenatal clinic, because these risk factors, they are even defined in the antenatal risk factors and intrapartum. Intrapartum are the ones that occur during that period of delivery. Yes. But they are the risk factors that you can detect them during pregnancy. So it is very important for women to go for the visits. Previously, there used to be 4 visits. Then later 8 visits. There is a debate about the 8 visits, but every woman should visit an antenatal clinic.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me, due to the interest of time, let me throw this question to both of you, and I'll start with you. What do you think are the strategies that can be employed by both the government and the players within the healthcare industry to enhance efforts of blood donation, to ensure that cases of PPH are mitigated, to reduce deaths due to blood loss?
Thank you. It's a very nice, very good question. Because previously, there used to be campaigns in schools. There used to be blood drive campaigns in schools. Then, during COVID time, because you could not go to those schools. And also, must reach a point that blood is supposed to be donated voluntary. Voluntary, not going to schools and ask those boys and girls to donate blood. Every Kenyan, like if I may ask, have you ever donated even a single pint? Every adult, you should have donated blood in the hospital. And I said previously, blood is not bought. Blood comes from a human being. So what can be done is a lot of education about blood and about blood products, because it is not only blood that is used. We use blood and we also use blood products. Blood products are like plasma and packed red cells. They are still in blood. And remember, even these women that we are delivering, some have types of blood that are very rare to get. And when now we have this rare blood, and this woman gets postpartum hemorrhage, it becomes a big problem. So we should have campaigns all over, in churches, in schools, and all over, and even in this studio, to ask Kenyans, to ask even these people in this studio to go and donate blood. Come to the health facility. There are satellites where you go. You say that I've come to donate. Make sure you have an effort of donating blood every year. Give one pint of blood. It will help another Kenyan.
All right, Daktari, briefly.
Very briefly. I think we can look at this in, let's say, different prongs, as it were. As a society that is COGS, University of Nairobi, Midwifery Association, we are actually have come up with a strategy, and that strategy is we are holding a PPH run, and that is on the 6th of October. What is the purpose of this? Number one is to create awareness about PPH. And so we are welcoming all of them, all the Kenyans, yourself included, people in the studio and so on. Please come. Register at www.ndpph.com. Come and run. You can run, you can walk, you can jog, you can ride your bicycle, and so on. And it's for all ages. Why are we doing this? Number one, creating knowledge is power. So when Kenyans know that there is something called PPH, and these are the whatevers, so that is one of the strategies. At the PPH run, we'll have a blood donation unit if you want to donate blood. We want to create an app whereby people can actually put their names, especially the ones with very distinct blood groups, O negative, for example. They can join in, and so on. So that is a strategy. And of course, the government can educate more people, distribute them, human resource, as we said. Make sure there are medicines in the hospitals, make sure that we have commodities, and of course, an environment which is enabling. So please come for that run. Let us create awareness. We are starting with Nairobi. We'll go to other counties later on, maybe next year. And our aim is for this to be an annual thing in the country.
All right. I'm told we are overrunning. But that was our time. That is Dr. Kireki Omano, who is the president of Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society of Kenya, and Naomi Mutiso, who is the midwife at Thika Level 5 Hospital, talking to us about matters to do with postpartum hemorrhage. This is where we cap this conversation and the entire Good Morning Kenya. Thank you for tuning in. Let's do this tomorrow morning. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.